You look great. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Diana. Welcome to Judson Memorial Church. And on this day, March 26, 2023, we are, oh, wait a minute, excuse me. Good morning, Judson Diaspora. Y'all know I don't forget you all. How you doing today? Under the leadership today of Reverend Micah Bucey. So thank you all for joining us today. On this wonderful day, we are closing out Women's History Month today. And we're extremely excited about it. And you can tell we have, they say in the old school days, my mother would say, we got a rostrum full with a whole bunch of women up in here today. So we're grateful for that. Yeah, give them a hand, all of them. Even my folks online, if you wanted to clap for them, you can. Yeah, one of the things that we do here, we start our services, oh, for those that didn't know, my name is Reverend Dr. Valerie H. Holly. Thank you for that, too. I appreciate that. I didn't know I had people on that side of the world, too. Yeah, I'm one of the ministers here. Reverend Micah, I've already mentioned, and I'm not going to say it the way she would want me to say it, but our transition minister is in the house again today, Reverend Julie Johnson Staples. She would like me to say this is her last Sunday. I guess I just said that, didn't I? But we're grateful that she's here with us today. We're grateful that all of you are here with us, as well as our folks in the diaspora. Thank you so much. And to start our service off, we're extremely excited about today. And what we would like to do is how we start. If there are any announcements. By the way, I know Micah has it up regarding the, in the chat where you can get the bulletin. So you can follow along. And those that are in the service, you probably have a bulletin with you. So if you have announcements, please keep your mask on. And when you get up here, take the mask off and then speak. Let me tell you something, and notice me, those of you that are getting up. And I have a loud voice. Yet when I step back, it's still not as nice. You really do have to get close so that everyone can hear you. Okay, so I guess I'm going to go with Gregg first.
Swallow the mic. That's what they say. Valerie, Dr. Reverend Valerie, you are appreciated on this side too.
Amen. Thank you.
My name is Craig Keel. I'm co-chair of the Pledge Campaign, and my co-chair is Keenberger, who usually, when I look over there, is right there, but for some reason she's not today. But we'd just like everyone to know that, and those in the diaspora too, please pay attention to this announcement. We have exceeded $400,000 in our pledge amount pledged, but that is $30,000 short of our goal. So we need some new pledgers. We need somebody who last year pledged $500 to say, this year I can pledge $1,000, because we lose pledgers every year. So please do keep that in mind if you love Judson. Pledging is something that, if you can do it, please do it. Second thing I wanted to say is I went to Prini Alavi's opening last night of her pottery show. I've never seen so many pots in one space, one cramped, tight space. But you won't have any trouble finding hers if you've seen the photo on the listserv. It's a beautiful blue thing, and it's got all kinds of possible names. We joked about what it could be called, and I'll let you use your imagination. And there's some other nice pieces in the exhibit, so it doesn't take long to visit, even though there are a lot of pieces there. It's on, I think, number 6 Jones Street, but you can't miss it. It says something about pottery or art in the sign above the store. Thank you.
Morning, Judson. My name is Brooks. I'm one of your community ministers. I am here to let you know about some upcoming programming. So one of them is a Palm Sunday processional that is coming up. It's just going to be right over here in Washington Square Park. There are flyers for it at the back of the room. Let me give you a little taste of it. Right. So it is a people's procession for justice. We're going to be a gathering to retell the story of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, to remember Jesus' radical message of nonviolence and justice, to sing and pray together, and to lift up the ways this story is a living story through struggles for justice in our world today. All are welcome for this brief service that begins Holy Week for Christians, and it's April 2nd, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. Just look for everybody gathering around and holding palms in Washington Square Park. It shouldn't be too hard to find on that day. Also, today at 1 o'clock, we're going to be gathering in Valerie's office for Mystery School, where we're going to be talking about and celebrating another very historic woman, Hildegard of Bingen. She was a theologian, a philosopher, a healer, a composer, a musician, a natural historian, right? The list goes on and on, best-selling author, and I highly urge you to make it out and not miss this wonderful little bit of Mystery School. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Suzanne?
I'm not good at operating these things. I'm Suzanne, she, her. In 2 weeks is Easter, which means that after the service, we are going to have a sit-down Easter meal. Everyone is welcome to participate. It'll be right after church, but in order to have a meal, we need food. So I have sign-up sheets, and those things that we could use are a main dish, or a side dish, which could be vegetable, or salad, or deviled eggs, which is what I bring, or dessert, or a beverage. So I'm going to pass 2 clipboards around. If you would please sign up with your name, what you would like to bring, if you know at this point, your contact information, and we also need volunteers to set up and to clean up. So I'll pass these around. If you are online and plan to attend the shared meal, Suresh is sending around an email that you can respond to let us know what you can bring. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Maxine Phillips, she, her. So following on that, in order to eat this shared meal, we will have to take our masks off. I'm speaking here for the Health and Safety Committee. We ask that everyone self-test on the day of. Last time there was a shared meal, there was an adorable video. I don't know if we'll have that again, but I think you got the message. So self-test before you come to the meal. Thank you.
Good morning, Judson. My name is Linda, she, her, and hers. I'd just like to remind you that today at 5 o'clock, Ruby Rims is going to be doing drag bingo. I hope you guys are going to join me and celebrate and be there. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, excuse me.
Ruby Rims, 5 to 8:30, 235 East 84th Streets.
Okay, so we may have to scratch that, Linda. I just got word that Ruby's in the hospital. So, and Micah, you just heard me as well. So we will do what we have to do. to reach out to him. And all you praying people, y'all know what to do. Any more, and then folks that want to send in good energy, please do. Any more now?
And if you're online, you can go online to judson.org/give and scroll down and you see the word pledge. Click on that and then self-pledge.
So from the people that are on Zoom that may not have heard Craig, there a way to go to Judson website, thank you, whatever that is, and you can scroll down and pick up information. I'm assuming that's what I heard. Okay. All right. No more announcements. There was supposed to be another announcement. I don't see him here. Then I am not going to make the announcement for him. I will wait for when he's here. At this time, it is Abigail. I need to sit down.
Our confession in the form of a land acknowledgement. For over 10,000 years, indigenous peoples respected and cared for this part of the world. Now this physical space stands on the unceded land, once known as Lenape-Hoking. The Lenape Delaware people, who lived peacefully here for centuries, spoke the Munsee dialect. They were a matrilineal society. Members of the mother's clan brought up the children and educated them. Women made the decisions regarding who was sent into battle and who stayed at home, land, territory, and property rights, and leadership for the community. They were gatherers and planters, potters and basket weavers. The men were hunters and builders. We mourn the inconceivable losses of these people who suffered grave injustice. We mourn the loss of the knowledge they would have brought to us about how to live in harmony with the land and its peoples. We remember them, their elders both past and present, as well as future generations, and we commit to the work of justice and seeking right relationships on this land. We are so fortunate today to have Erin Snedeker. She is going to provide our prelude. She seems to be deeply connected to our community minister, Brooks Applegate, like by marriage.
Good morning, Judson. Please remain seated for our call to worship, which is printed in your worship bulletins and is a litany of thanks for bold women. And these are words that have been inspired by the minister Avis D. Graves. It's a responsive litany, so I will be the one, and y'all will be the many. Lord our God, we give thanks today for the witness of bold women. From the earliest times until today and on into the future, bold women show all of us how to live as God's beloved children in God's beloved creation. For our biblical forebears, Mother Eve, Prophet Miriam, Judge Deborah, Queen Esther, midwives Shiphrah and Puah, kinfolk Ruth and Naomi, for Mary and Elizabeth, the disciple Mary Magdalene, for the daring, persistent widow, the determined Syrophoenician woman, and the hundreds of women who remain unnamed. Lord, we thank you. For our political and social forebears, those willing to fight for their God-given rights and for equity for all. Thank you, Lord. There have been bold women all around us on our way, if only we look for them. For whom do we thank the Lord today in this moment? Bring one to mind. I thank God for this witness in my life. And now we continue the work of the bold to work for justice for all, our kinship of women, men, transgender, and non-binary, as we look to the day when all will be valued as God's beloved. Now, will all who are able in body or spirit rise and join in our opening song, which this morning is the old school Glory, Glory, Hallelujah.
be seated. Thank you. The ancient testimony is taken from 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 6 to 13, and is taken from a women's lectionary for the whole church by Wilda C. Gaffney. Wisdom is what we speak to the mature. Wisdom that is not of this age or of the rulers who are doomed to perish. But we speak God's wisdom through a mystery that has been hidden, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. This, none of the rulers of this age comprehended. For if they comprehended, they would not have crucified the sovereign of glory. Yet, as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor come upon a human heart, what God has prepared for those who love God. To us, God has revealed these things through the Spirit. For the Spirit searches all things, even the depths of God. For what human person knows what is human except by the human spirit within that person? Also, in the same way, no one comprehends what is truly God except by the Spirit of God. Now then, we have not received the spirit of this world, rather the Spirit that is from God, in order that we may understand the gifts bestowed on us by God. And these things we speak of, not in words of human-taught wisdom, but rather Spirit-taught, interpreting spiritual things to those who are spiritual.
The modern testimony this morning is taken from an interview with Pink on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert that was in February of this year. Pink was talking to Stephen Colbert about why her new album is titled Trust Fall, and she said, I feel like a lot of us feel like we're falling backwards and we don't know where the ground is, and that's a trust fall. I put a lot of faith in the universe and the people around me and in myself. You kind of have to ask yourself, what's worth falling for? And who's supposed to catch you? Or do you catch yourself? A lot of questions around. Colbert said, I think one of the hardest lessons to learn, and it took me a long time to learn it, is that it takes time to learn that it isn't easier to live in trust and vitality as opposed to fear and morbidity. It's just better. It's just as hard, but with a better outcome. And it's hard to know that until you actually make that decision. Pink said, I don't believe in fearlessness. I think that's just a catchphrase. I believe in feeling real fear and not letting that divert you or make your choices for you. Colbert said, that's why courage is a virtue. Our response in song is I Believe in a New World by Al Carmines, and if you'll notice, there's an insert in your bulletin for page 8, and that will give you all the words, but I think you know it. When I joined in 1987, very pregnant, I explained that we would have joined sooner, but I couldn't learn to sing inexorably 3 times fast, but you did it really well. We move toward a new world on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. In the first part of the ancient testimony, Paul was telling the Corinthians that he did not come with lofty words or wisdom proclaiming the mystery of God, but more as a demonstration of the Spirit and of power to renew their faith. And that's our hope for you in this hour, that you may be encouraged by the actions and spirit by those who have touched our lives. And speaking of those who have touched my life, the 4 witnesses that we have here today, Holly Bean, Mary Meyer, Maxine Phillips, and Grace Goodman, each of whom have contributed mightily to the health and well-being of this church beginning in 1958, do the math, with the others coming during the 60s and 1970. Each of these women has served as moderator at one time, among many other positions within the church. Did I serve as moderator? Why, no, I did not. And why is that, Hastings? Well, it's because God loved me and had a wonderful plan for my life. That's a little evangelical throwback for those who know that phrase. We are fortunate that technology allows Holly Bean to be with us in the service this morning, and we begin with her remembrance of Miriam Corbett.
Good morning, Judson. I'd like to begin today's reflections on these 4 women of Judson by calling your attention to the short bios that are printed in your bulletin about them. You can find more facts about their lives in that, and the rest of us who will speak today will give you more depth. Miriam Corbett, May Gautier, Arlene Carmen, and Bibi Anderson all deserve a special place in the saga of Judson's life and ministry. Each of them occupied a place of presence and power in our church as well as in the world beyond Judson's walls. Each of them chose freely to be who they were and to do what they did, and they could have led their lives much less boldly, but their values and their beliefs led them onto higher ground. The first woman we're going to look at is Miriam Corbett, and I will reflect on her. Miriam Rachel Corbett was a lifelong churchgoer, a respected American Baptist professional laywoman, a classic New Englander, and a devoted New Yorker. She was an excellent friend to many people, including myself. Upon meeting her, you might be so charmed by her quick wit, her sophisticated style and intelligence that you might not, at first, notice the strong Christian roots that fed her spirit and emboldened her life. Multifaceted women like Miriam are hard to capture in words, and it is especially true when it comes to faith, Miriam's faith, which is my focus today. Throughout our friendship, I sensed that what led her, guided her, and upheld her was what she believed of God and of Jesus. But she did not go about professing or confessing her faith. Frankly, I would have appreciated a chance to find out more about what informed her faith. But I could sense that she would not tell me directly, and she never did. I think she did not want to call attention to herself in that way, nor risk self-importance. She took care when she talked directly about faith, as if to avoid mishandling sacred matters. Not that Miriam was reluctant in other ways to speak or to write. She had great facility with words. And in 1994, she was persuaded to prepare a sermon for Judson entitled The Journey West. It was about her upcoming retirement. And so I've chosen some passages to share with you to express her values and her beliefs better than I ever could. On inclusivity. I've always been comforted by the image of being on a journey with my brothers and sisters. I don't mean just blood brothers and sisters, and I don't mean just brothers and sisters at church. When I was a little girl, the Sunday school teacher showed us a picture of Christ blessing the children. I was amazed and thrilled because everyone I had seen up to that point in rural Maine looked much like me. And here were people of various shades from all around the world, and I was part of that. I still find it exciting, and that is why I love New York and want us to succeed in living together. On vocation, I want to speak of work within the context of our total vocation as one of the gifts we give to others. The older I get, the more I am impressed with the gift of competency. If you bring competency into your work, you are serving God and your brothers and sisters, and in an increasingly complex world, we depend upon others to do their jobs well, and to the extent that they do, they minister to us, and they participate in God's continuing creation. On the journey of life. I like Anne Sexton's image of her journey of life and toward death as being in a wooden rowboat. I remember wooden rowboats, especially during the Depression. You never left shore without a can for bailing out the water which leaked in. And you did get blisters if you rowed too long. And then there was the time Ralphie Cleveland and I got caught in a thick patch of water lilies and had to be rescued. I was not supposed to be with Ralphie Cleveland anytime, any place, and the whole incident created quite a stir. I didn't know at that time that all of life was going to have some of this. Rain, blisters, people not wanting you to be with certain people. And finally, on her Christian faith. When I wasn't getting into what some deemed as trouble, I was going dutifully to Sunday school and church and midweek prayer meeting, where I listened to some of the older people, mostly women, give testimonies. The testimonies had to do with their religious experiences, and some reported having direct conversations with Jesus. Nothing like that ever happened to me. I almost didn't join the church. When other young people were preparing for baptism, yours truly didn't seem to be moving an inch. Finally, the pastor, a good, gentle man, asked me why I wasn't planning to be baptized with my peers. I told him I was waiting for some experience such as the older people seemed to have had, and nothing had happened to me. And then he said, "Do you love Jesus?" And I said, without hesitation, "Yes, I do, because I did. And I still do." Amen.
Arlene Carmen was and is my hero. Her involvement with the clergy consultation service and abortion rights as well as her work with prostitutes, are among the most publicly known aspects of her work. But she was engaged in many other things that would take too long to share. Instead, I'd like to speak a few of my personal memories and experiences, which I hope will provide a little insight into the remarkable person she was. I still find myself asking, not what would Jesus do, but what would Arlene do? I first came to Judson in 1968 and gradually became involved through the oratorios and committees and began to get to know Arlene. One of my favorite memories is the couple of years that we shared Christmas Day together. We'd have a Jewish Christmas. We'd go to Chinatown for dinner, come back to my apartment, play Yahtzee, drink plum wine, and visit. While Arlene was an intensely private person, these occasions gave me a chance to ask a little about herself and how she became such a strong activist. She was born and went to school in the Bronx. Her family was a secular but deeply Jewish family, strongly rooted in social justice activism. She was very proud of her communist relatives. Educated in the New York City school systems, New York was embedded in her DNA. I love the story of how she met Howard Moody. She was very active in the Village Independent Democrats in the 60s. She had an idea for a fundraiser and was seeking support for it. But everyone she told about it just said, "Great idea, you should talk to Howard Moody." Taking it to a Christian clergyman was the last thing she wanted to do, but finally there was no other option. She made an appointment to see him, feeling very discomfited at the idea of even going into a Christian church, let alone to meet a minister. However, when she met him and shared her idea, his response was, "Great idea, let's do it." And that began a partnership in activism, first in the VID and later as a staff person at Judson, that lasted until Howard's retirement in 1992, although she continued on staff until her death in 1994. But I like to think it also shows that in pursuing a vision, there was nowhere that Arlene wouldn't go. When she joined the staff in 1967, Judson was already involved in the clergy consultation service on abortion. Her presence enabled it to extend its reach and improve its services. Through their CCS connections, they helped set up one of the first abortion clinics in New York City. However, after Roe v. Wade, that clinic started to fail financially as abortions could now be obtained in other states. Arlene strongly advocated for keeping it going in order to protect the standard of care and keep pressure on pricing. The board of the old clinic voted to remove itself and install a new board of Judson volunteers, and I was a member of that group. Arlene created and supervised a volunteer corps who provided all the ancillary support services. Initially, only medical staff were paid. Thus, the clinic continued to operate with a Saturday abortion clinic and a Tuesday evening GYN clinic. She negotiated a sizable debt inherited from the old clinic down to a level that the income from the clinic could support. One of our board members who taught business and economics at Columbia University expressed an awe at her negotiating skills. She got Coca-Cola to reduce what was owed. Nobody, he said, gets Coca-Cola to negotiate. All of this Arlene was doing while maintaining her work as administrator of Judson. One event that took place at the clinic has always stuck with me. She always remembered that her activism was to support improving individual lives. In the CCS, it was the individual lives and experiences of women with unwanted pregnancies that drove her passion and strategies. She had no patience for an institution that forgot its purpose, even when it was our own. One evening, I was working as a volunteer in the follow-up clinic. A woman had had an incomplete abortion, but had failed to come for her scheduled follow-up. When she finally came in, she was well beyond the time that a repeat procedure could be performed. Her only options were a late-term abortion or carrying to term. There was a great deal of anxiety among the staff and paid administrator as to the clinic's responsibility, and the woman herself was not being tended to. When Arlene arrived to take charge of the situation, she immediately took the woman aside and talked with her for a long time. You could almost see her encircle the woman with her caring, enabling the woman to relax and work out what she herself wanted to do, but not what might be good for the clinic. The woman was visibly more relaxed and in charge of herself when she left. Arlene understood the importance of institutions, but she did not forget that they were there to make life better for people, not the other way around. She had a gift for listening deeply. She didn't push you in a direction, but simply raised questions that helped you find more clarity, and she could ask very hard questions. She championed those she believed were not being heard, were being unfairly stigmatized, or treated as disposable by our social systems. During her varied career, she worked in civil rights, women's rights, people with AIDS, asylum. As she gradually became more a part of the congregation, she came to appreciate what she saw that the church could do and be. She loved the kids and would organize bubblegum blowing contests. She created and hosted groups around topics that most churches wouldn't touch, including groups for women to discuss menopause and pornography. She also personally sheltered and provided hospitality for people in all kinds of need. To me, Arlene was a complicated, caring, difficult, loving, demanding, creative, and kind force. Knowing her was one of the great gifts to my life. The legacy of Judson Church has been deeply enriched by the gifts and service this remarkable woman brought to this community.
So that was the first part. We have two more. Yet we have now we will have special music, again performed by Erin Snedeker. This time she'll be on the piano doing a piece called Salmon by Olafur Arnold. Erin. Our next two speakers, first will be Maxine, or May Gautier, and then Grace Goodman.
Well, when I first heard that the theme of this morning's service was they didn't have to do it, but they did have to, I said, of course they had to do it. And I didn't even know at that point how much May had done, and is still doing, because at Judson, you don't, as Holly referred, you don't always talk openly about your faith or your beliefs, you just do. I probably met May in the late 60s, and the first thing that struck me was how attractive this delicate, petite woman was, and still is at age 93. The second thing that always struck people was her lilting Southern accent. And I knew that a Southern accent often meant a high level of commitment to racial and social justice. But May didn't talk about that. It was just a given in her life, as was her faith. In the mid-70s, she was the administrative aide to Donald Shriver, the legendary social ethicist and president of Union Seminary. He was the man who hired Cornel West, James Forbes, Beverly Harrison, and others, the man who kept Union financially alive so that it can send us wonderful community ministers and other people out into the world. And he helped shape it as a beacon for social justice, and she was there at his side. She herself was a seminary graduate, not a common thing then for women. What I didn't know about was her life before New York, a life far from the one that had been mapped out for her. She told a friend that she was supposed to be the single child who would take care of her parents in their old age, but she went off script very early on. She changed my life is the refrain I've heard from people who knew her when she was associate director of the Wesley Foundation at the University of South Carolina, and this is the 50s into the 60s. These were fellow Bible belters whose eyes were opened by May. It was as if she believed that there was something good in us that we were not living up to, and she would help us get there, said one former student. On a segregated campus, she made sure that the white students met for Bible study with black students from nearby historically black colleges. When 3 black students integrated the University of South Carolina, May arranged for people to accompany the lone woman to her meals in the dining room so that she wouldn't be eating by herself. By the early 1980s, May had decided to get married and found a soulmate in Robert Stone, pastor of Jan Hus Presbyterian Church, and a man as committed as she was to racial justice. She went on to direct a peace ministry for the Presbyterians. When Bob retired, they moved to a Presbyterian retirement village in Pasadena, where, she became volunteer director of a store called 10,000 Villages, which is one of a chain of stores dedicated to selling fair trade items, and she took it into one of the top-selling stores in the country. She was devastated by Bob's death, but kept on keeping on, and several years later married a former Methodist missionary, Norm Thomas, who brought to her his large extended biological family and an even larger chosen family from Africa, whom he had sponsored for immigration. So this woman who never had biological children of her own, now I would get a Christmas letter from her, and there was this huge group, interracial group of about 50 people, and there in the middle would be Norm and May, and she looked very happy. The last internet reference I found to her was an announcement that in 2020, residents of her village could expect to be getting a voter guide from her on key issues as to where the candidates stood. She was 90 years old at that time and still helping people find their way. She didn't have to do any of the things she did that went against the culture she grew up in, but she did because of her faith. What remains with me, though, are the things she truly didn't have to do and did. We were not close friends, but she knew my mother lived far away, and when I was planning my wedding, she said, "I'll be your New York mother and take care of everything on the day of." And she did, leaving both me and my parents to enjoy the day. And 2 weeks ago, I was telling somebody about this and discovered that she did the same for someone else in the congregation. And I would guess that we weren't the only ones. Later, she held a baby shower for us at Jan Hus, which had fairly big room. Again, not something she had to do. And it was her long-term commitment to another Judson congregant that still amazes me. After she left to go to Jan Hus with Bob, she stayed in touch with Jordis Anderson, an elderly, very prickly artist and a hoarder. Jordis's money gave out, and she had to go to a nursing home. A group of us cleaned out her apartment, which was quite an experience. May retrieved as much as she could, and every week she sold items at a table at Jan Hus's flea market. And this gave Jordis the only spending money she had, because by that time she was completely impoverished. And May would take it out to her at the nursing home on Staten Island. You won't find these acts of kindness on an internet search. She didn't have to do them, but she did.
Good morning. As many of you know, take this off. As many of you know, I'm a retired lawyer, graduate of Columbia Law School. B.B.J. Anderson, my topic for today, is also a retired lawyer and a graduate of Columbia. I think that's why I was asked to talk about her, because we were really not that well acquainted when she was here. B.B. was introduced to Judson in 1980 by a fellow law student, Colleen Myers, whom some of you may remember. B.B. remained an active Judson member until she retired in about 35 years later in 2016 and moved to Portland, Oregon, near her family. B.B. told me that when Colleen invited her to church, her response was, well, I'm not a particularly religious person, but I'll go and see what it's like. And once she got in, she really enjoyed being at Judson. She told me it was first because Judson preached values that she agreed with and also worked for them. Also, B.B. liked the people she met, an interesting bunch of service-minded people in a variety of professions. B.B. was not one to blow her own horn. She just did her work at work. And at church, she would talk mostly about her hobby, which was birding. Everybody knew that if you found some strange bird and didn't know what it was, B.B. was the person to ask, and she would tell you. I knew only in general that she was a lawyer working for women's rights and other rights, but especially the right to abortion. But I didn't realize what a major player she was in the abortion wars of the past 20 years until I looked up her resume to prepare for this service. And then I had a conversation to ask her some more questions. B.B.'s main career was with the Center for Reproductive Rights. Back then, when Roe v. Wade was still the law of the land, conservative states would try to block abortions by enacting increasingly strict laws on where and how abortions could be done. The Center for Reproductive Rights, among others, would then sue to invalidate those laws as unconstitutional. And those cases in those days almost won, almost always. B.B. started working at the center in 1998 as a trial attorney, representing abortion providers in lawsuits all over the United States. By 2011, she had risen to be the director of the center's entire nationwide litigation program. And 4 years after that, she became its vice president. B.B. was not one of those celebrity lawyers who argue cases at the Supreme Court. She did argue cases in regional appeals courts, and when she became director of the Center for Reproductive Rights nationwide litigation team, she led its strategic planning. As vice president there, she also handled external media relations and oversaw budgeting, personnel, and daily operations. Not much of a job. I asked B.B. in our conversation if she ever had felt that the work was dangerous, especially early on when she was the lawyer in an anti-abortion case in some state in the South. She diplomatically but correctly said it was not the lawyers who were in danger, it was the actual abortion providers. And then she remarked rather sadly that she had personally known the abortion doctor in upstate New York who had been shot dead at his home by an anti-abortion protester. She also went on to tell me that when she had a case out of town, she never told the taxi driver or the hotel clerk what she was in town to do. And when she met with her clients, the abortion providers' clinics, she would go very early in the morning to be there when it opened, before it opened, so that she would not have to encounter the inevitable protesters. At the national level, the reproductive rights conferences and major meetings were careful to publicize these meetings only by the date, not until the very last minute, the place where they would be meeting, again, because of possible protesters. So I could hear that, yes, Bibi was always aware of potential danger, but she kept on working. What Bibi admitted to me was hard about her work was that everything had to be done very fast. So she said, I just felt exhausted all the time. To keep a new restrictive law from harming women who needed abortions, the attorneys had to keep the law from ever going into effect. That meant they had to work night and day to develop the entire case up to the point that it could be filed with the court before the law's effective date. Could be a matter of weeks, could be more, but it was always faster than you would normally do that kind of work. Exhausting, yes. I asked Bibi what attracted her to this work and why she kept at it. She said, well, her family had a strong public service bent. Her father was a newspaper editorial writer, and he cared deeply about the public's right to know. Bibi observed that he loved his work, using his skills to make the world better, and that money was just not the point. She absorbed that ethic and followed that model. And she told me that, looking back, litigating for women's reproductive rights was simply the most compelling work she had ever done. Before she got that job, she had other public service jobs. After law school, Bibi worked for Winthrop, Stimson, Putnam, and Roberts, a premier law firm in New York City. That's what you do when you graduate from Columbia. But unlike most other new lawyers on the partnership track, Bibi quit after a few years to work for the Legal Aid Society. Later, she returned to her home state of California, where she became a partner in a Bay Area law firm that represented public entities and let her do a lot of pro bono work. But she became convinced that a better place to work on major public issues would be on the East Coast, not the West Coast, where she was. So when she spotted a job opening at the new HIV law project in New York City, she took it. Later, she became the director of the HIV project at Lambda Legal, the nation's leading gay rights firm. Bibi also told me that when she was thinking about returning to New York, the chance to return to Judson was a very strong motivation also. And Judson certainly benefited from her return. She served several terms on the board, at various times was on the finance and personnel committees, and she filled an especially critical slot as the chair of the personnel committee during a difficult pastoral transition period between Peter Larman and Donna Scopper. In sum, Bibi J. Anderson is one of the many Judson women who exemplify a life of service. She didn't have to do it. She could have been a rich lawyer in a prestigious law firm, but she chose a different path, and women all over the United States are better off for her work. I'm so pleased to be her witness here today.
I was prepared to say something snarky for the offertory, even though I had promised to be a better person this year. But as I sat looking at our stained glass windows, at the beginning of the service, they were all dark. And then one by one, they filled with sunlight until you could finally see all the bright and beautiful colors. And as the sun moves, inexorably around our building. The final one is the only one without a person in it, a figure in it, and it says, "Her price was above rubies." Insert your own person here. But as I watched them fill up and the beautiful light coming in, it just struck me that that's what our giving is like. The more we give, the more colors we bring, the more brightness to the world, the more definition, the more stories, and we are surrounded by great witnesses, as we have heard today, with more to come in our future with your help. So I would ask you in this moment to give as you can, and there are easy peasy ways of doing that online, on our website, through Venmo or text. It's all in the bulletin. And Zoomies, it's on your link. Craig mentioned that if you love Judson, please pledge. I say if you like Judson, or you're not sure about Judson, but you're just curious where we're going, we'd be happy to receive your money, and please give generously. It is a day of beaming down beans, and Emmy Bean will bring our offertory song with some other of her friends. Emmy grew up in the church, so we call her a Judson kid, even though she's got a kid of her own, and we're delighted that we can at least hear Emmy in this way. Thank you.
Hey there, you, shattered in 1,000 pieces, weeping in the darkest night. Hey there, you, stand up on your own 2 feet, stumbling through the night. Hey, when the lights go out, it's a waiting game. Hey there, how you gonna make it through to the morning sun? Singing to you and the stars that shine over you, lead to the other side. Sing to the moon and the stars will shine over you. Heaven's got time for time. Hey there, you, looking for a brighter season. Need to lay your burden now. Hey there, you, drowning in a helpless feeling, buried under deeper ground. Hey you, the lights go down, it's a waiting game. How you gonna make it through the morning sun? Singing to the moon
I'd like you to join me in giving a hand to, I'm going to start in this order. I want to give a hand to our tech people today that did such a wonderful job with the video presentation and also the song. They had several things to do, and the photos up there. That was really lovely. And then let's give a hand to the 4 speakers. Reverend Holly Bean, Mary Meyer, Grace Goodman, and Maxine Phillips. What a wonderful job they did. And I'm going to ask Abigail to come up to me, please. Just come. So, if you've got the digital fountain, you know the story. If you didn't get the digital fountain, then here's the deal. I was the Zoom pastor one Sunday. And during the coffee hour, I watched Maxine, I think Holly was on, Reverend Holly, and others talk about some of these very women. And I was enthralled as well as informed. Their energy, the people, our people here, these folks, their energy touched me. And the stories touched me. So I got it in my head, you know what? If you don't tell the story, people don't know. So, my idea. And then I went to someone that is like, Peggy, don't get upset. I do have other mentors. Reverend Holly Bean is one of them. And so I called her. I said, listen, this occurred to me. I think this would work. And then she liked it, and this was about 3 or 4 months ago. So we started the formation of it. And then she mentioned the archivist. Is that what you said? It can happen. Okay, all right. I call her Abigail Hastings, so y'all some call her Hastings. She said, well, let's get Abigail in. So give Abigail a hand, y'all, as well. Thank you. This worked the way I thought it would. Thank you, Reverend Holly Bean. I know you still hear me. And I loved it. I love the stories. I love the energy. I love the way it works for ending or closing out. It doesn't end. It closes out this month of celebrating women. Yet, like February, you continue to celebrate folks that folks don't want to talk about all year long. And one of the things Reverend Holly said to me yesterday, she hopes that we continue to talk about the stories. And not just about women, but some of the men in this church. I've learned some things about of their work in a time where they didn't have to do it, but they did have to do it. They chose to be courageous. They chose to be bold. They chose the truth. Well, as we understand it, when we say everyone has a seat at the table, we do mean that. They do. So thank you all for allowing this to happen. Thank you again to our speakers. Thank you to all of our music folks. Oh my God, they were all Erin, Snedeker, and Emmy, Bean, and all of our music. Thank you so much. And at this time, we will go to the benediction. Theme is she didn't have to, but she did have to. I think it was Maxine, or no, it was Grace that said it. Could have just rested on your money, or your privilege, or both, in a time where you could have died. And we know people that did die. Take a moment to remember those that did die. In their truth, in their care for others. That didn't look like them, didn't even live like them, and yet they knew this is wrong. It's straight up wrong. to the Mother, Father, everything God, to the God that the Jewish Bible said, when you say the I am that I am God, is the God that was in the past, the God that's with us, and the God that will forever be. First, we just say thank you for today. God, we thank you for history, a history that they didn't really want you to know about, they didn't want us to know about, yet we're grateful for the folks that were able to do what they did. We thank you for our people in Judson that gave us the stories, their way, their memories, and there's so many others. So right now, God, we thank you for the service. We thank you for every participant, every Judson diaspora family that's with us, as well as the folks in Judson at 243 Thompson. We thank you, God, for these women. We thank you for Women's History Month that allows us to understand another group that folks want to minimize and limit. And yet, God, you said we all belong to you. Thank you for everyone with a child. Thank you for everyone without one. We thank you for every woman today that understands that their existence is still one of yours. So God, this service allowed us to understand history, allowed us to understand you were with them, and allows us to understand all of us are valued. So be with us as we leave this place, but never leaving you, understanding that if no one sees us, you do. If no one praises us, you do. And if no one loves us, you do. And for that, I'm grateful. We're grateful. We thank you in the name of love, which is your son, Jesus, whom we thank you for. And we thank you for God, however you show up. Amen. And at this time, those that can, you will be standing for our closing song, which is found on page 9 in your bulletin, and it's called I Am Pressing on the Upward Way. Those of you that can, thank you.
Judson Diaspora, we are so grateful for your presence in our worship service this morning. Our time together has come to a close. We will now turn you into the gentle and loving hands of Pastor Micah Bucey. Thank you for being in worship with us today. And we will end our service with you online. But here in the meeting room, we're not finished.